Good afternoon, everyone. A very, very warm welcome and namaskar. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Parul Goswami. I'm Deputy Director at Data Leads. And welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I know these past few months have been very, very hectic and very tiring with election coverage. So we thought we'll take a breather and we'll shift a focus to the environment. Um, Before we start, I just wanted to talk about a fantastic Google News initiative, India Training Network. It is led by Data Leads, and it's one of the world's biggest and the most impactful fact-checking training networks. And since 2018, the network has empowered journalists, media educators, and students with digital tools, skills to find, verify, combat misinformation, and importantly, tell engaging stories. These are some of our fantastic numbers. We have the network has done trainings in more than languages. We have 339 trainers all across India, and their trainings, their efforts have benefited more than 2,000 of newsrooms and universities, where 70,000 plus journalists, media educators, fact checkers, and journalism students have been trained across India. This is what our journey started in 2018, and these are some of the fantastic training moments. And the network is just growing stronger day by day, and we're just having so many more training moments. A bit of housekeeping. If you have any questions, entire webinar, feel free to put it in the chat box, and we will take as many questions as the time permits right after the presentation. So today, as we celebrate the World Environment Day, I'm very pleased to introduce our guest speaker, Aditi Tandon. Aditi is an accomplished journalist with over 15 years of experience in investigative reporting and environmental journalism. She herself has been a leading voice in advocating environmental issues. And today, in this webinar on combating greenwashing and climate disinformation, we'll be happy to hear her insights on greenwashing tools and how and approaches uh, um, to tackle it. So, welcome, Aditi. Thank you very much for being here with us. Over to you.
Thank you, Parul, and thank you everyone for joining in today. I know it's been a busy season for everyone with heat and with elections and with the results and a lot happening at the same time. But happy Environment Day, and I'm glad that you all could join in to talk about an important issue in the environment sphere. Um, Parul, you can start sharing the PPT and then I'll go through it.
Yeah, just sharing it. Just give me a moment.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, when we did the test, it was all working fine, and now for some reason my PPT is not being shared. Yeah. So in this session, I mean, before Parul shares the PPT, I can just talk a little bit about what we'll be talking about. So we'll be talking about greenwashing itself, what it is, why it happens, and how we can keep a lookout for it. What are the guidelines that are out there in India and otherwise, and how are companies doing greenwashing? And of course, we'll start with explaining what is greenwashing. So we'll go down that. And through the session, I'll also mention a few resources or tools for sources. You can just make a note of it because we won't be able to go through every piece of resource in this session. But it's something you all can make a note of that and explore those tools when you have time. So, Parul, we can start with the previous slide. Yeah, Yeah, the one after that. Yeah, this one. Okay, so to start with, I'm just going to ask you all, these are three common things we hear about in the environment space. We hear about paper cups being better than plastic cups. We hear about bamboo toothbrushes being better than plastic toothbrushes. We hear about compostable trash bags being better than plastic bags. So I wanted, and y'all can share your thoughts in the chat. Sorry, I think I dropped off.
No, no, Aditi, we can hear you.
Yeah, you're there? Okay. Yeah. So in the
Yes.
chat, if you could share, like, what do you think if, are these recyclable? Are paper cups a better option than uh, what do you think of bamboo toothbrushes? Are they recyclable? All these are recyclable with consequences. Great. So what I wanted to kind of give you an idea, I mean, we do hear that these are better. Yeah, someone talked about removable wax. So yes, so there are these paper cups are often lined with plastic material to which makes it hard to recycle because it's two types of materials that are fused. So when someone says paper cups are better than plastic cups, it's not entirely true because if they're lined with plastic, which is what holds your hot liquids and everything, they can't be recycled. And it's just a matter of yeah, not being able to be recycled, but people assume that paper is better than plastic in this case. So you'll see a lot of like organizations or restaurants just switching to paper cups, thinking that that's the more sustainable option. Bamboo toothbrushes. Again, the toothbrushes, the bristles may be made of plastic, which are not recyclable in the same way that bamboo is recyclable. And again, when you fuse two materials, it's hard to recycle it. And the third one is compostable bags. And we've seen this in a lot of supermarkets, especially in states where there have been bans on single-use plastic. You know, they come up with these 100% compostable bags. But all of these, if you read the fine print, it says that they can be recyclable only under industrial, or they can be compostable only under industrial conditions. And none of us have these industrial conditions at home. And I don't know if there are enough industrial recycling setups in India to recycle these at a large scale. And to recycle it or compost it, you'll need collection, all of that. So these are just some examples in our everyday life. We come across these in our everyday life, and these have been kind of made us believe that these are more sustainable options, more green options, but in reality they may not be so. And so today we'll talk about this, about what makes companies say that something is green when it isn't entirely green, and how we can keep an eye out for those. So we can go to the next slide, Parul. Right. So greenwashing, it's a play on the word whitewashing. So basically, when you're trying to hide something, and this is what a lot of organizations, even governments, they do to make their products or services or policies seem more environmental friendly than they actually are. So, for example, in the previous thing, we talked about those 100% compostable bags. So companies are trying to make us believe that they are 100% compostable. We should go for them. But if you investigate a bit, you'll realize that they are not as eco-friendly as they claim to be. So, and there are two ways that companies do this. Either they suppress all the negative information regarding the environmental performance, or they highlight some positive information, but keep away some other negative information. So basically, it's not entirely uh, true, the kind of information we get from many companies. And why do they do this? I mean, one of the main reasons is for profit, because a lot of, and there are studies that show this, that a high number of people, they would likely go for a product if they felt that it was eco-friendly, sustainable, better for the environment. I mean, as consumers, if you ask yourself also, if you had two options and you saw that, of the same type of product, and one said that it's sustainable, or one said that it's recyclable or eco-friendly, there are higher chances that you may go for those options because you believe it's true for the environment. So companies play on this emotion where people want to do something good. They play on that emotion, and it causes a kind of an information system where things are misleading. So labels are one of the most common misleading ways that companies are doing this. So you'll see labels saying 100% organic or earth friendly, eco friendly, but what do these labels mean? Many of them don't mean anything. They're just created labels by the company itself. There are certifications for organic, for environment friendly, for bio friendly, but those certifications, I mean, we don't know as consumers, we may not know those certifications. Right. So when we don't know those certifications, are you able to hear me now?
Yes, yes, now.
Yeah. So when we don't know those certifications, that's what the companies are playing upon, right? Like you won't know the difference between a, USDA organic certified label and a label which says 100% organic. You'll think it's the same. So greenwashing is trying to make your products or policies activities seem more environment friendly than they actually are. And this is done for profit primarily. You can go to the next one. So there are many techniques of greenwashing, and as people who have been, who are fact checkers, or if you've been, you know, part of the fact checking trainings, there are many techniques that people use or companies use to for misinformation. So whether it's something like cherry picking data, so they put out certain data which is which makes you think a certain way, or if it's selective disclosure, so it's hiding some information but sharing some information. All of these are techniques we see in general misinformation, whether it's political, whether it's anything else, and we also see that in environment. So these are just few of the various ways that greenwashing happens, and these are just the terminology that's been developed for them. But of course, it's not something that's very commonly used. But at least this helps us know what are the techniques that companies that are greenwashing, what are the techniques that they are using. So either they will, hide in a crowd. So basically, they join big. Kind of groups of organizations, industry bodies, so that people think that, okay, this people who are part of this industry body are usually more sustainable and green. So you kind of get hidden within that group. Or sometimes they highlight a green feature saying that, oh, this is 100% recyclable, but they're not telling you about the other 10 environmentally damaging feature. Okay, so one very common one is green shifting, where companies imply that individual users are the ones who should take the responsibility of dealing with climate change. So the companies, or fossil fuel companies especially, that are the main kind of reason behind the human oriented climate change that we're seeing now.
a lot of them will say, okay, what are you doing? Are you riding an electric cycle? Are you not using ACs in your house? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? And the responsibility then shifts on, or that's the intention, to shift the responsibility onto the consumer, whereas the scale of emissions that these companies are doing are way larger than you or me using an air conditioner for a couple of hours a day. So this is a very common feature, and it's not to say that we have no role to play. Yes, we do have responsibility in reducing our footprint, but the when companies try and do that, it's a way of greenwashing where they are trying to hide what they are doing and kind of putting the uh, responsibility onto the consumer. And again, we talked about labels. So mislabeling is a common tool of greenwashing. Changing the targets, this green rinsing. So basically, if I say that by 2024, 2026, I am going to reduce my emissions by 50%. And then next year, I'm like, okay, 2026 is like a year away. Am I going to be able to achieve it? Maybe not. So then I just change the target. I say, actually, we're going to reduce it by 20%. So, like, very close to the time of the year, they change the target so that and then they say, okay, see, we met the target, but the target has been changed, is what they don't reveal. And of course, underreporting what they're doing also to evade this investor security or to scrutiny, basically. Yeah, we can go to the next slide. Yeah, so these are, yeah, pardon, we're going to the next slide. Is everyone?
Hi. Um, yeah, okay. So this is the slide. So we learned about the types of greenwashing, and these are just a few examples. Um, so there are organizations like automotive manufacturers who will talk about decarbonizing all their factories, which is fine, but the main emissions from car manufacturers is the emissions from the cars itself. So if they're not addressing that and they are trying to, uh, you know, change the target to something which is okay, good, but is it the real issue that they should be targeting? So that's one type of greenwashing. Another is net zero emissions. You'll see this even country making these promises, lot of companies making these promises. You'll see this pretty often. So in that, I mean, the wording, they're very careful with the wording they use, and that's something for us to be careful about or question when we're reporting on this. So, for example, you'll see the quote here saying, "We have announced our ambition to reach net zero emissions by 2050." So they have not said that it's a target. They have said it's an ambition, which means they're going to try to do that. And it's that is a way of greenwashing, because if they don't do that, they'll just say that it's not a firm target. We tried it, and it's not something that can be verified, right? You can't test whether someone has the ambition for something. And then another one is this is also another common way of greenwashing, where people are funding projects in the environment sphere, but it's completely different from what they are actually doing. So, the gas companies, or fossil fuel companies, which are important places where emissions are high, they are funding something to heal injured pigeons, which is great, but it's a symbolic gesture. It's not linked to the major problem that they themselves are causing, which is carbon emissions. So these are just a few examples of what greenwashing looks like. And we can move to the next slide, Parul. Yeah. No, the one before this. Yeah. So, in recent times, especially during the COP, the climate change conference, which was held in Dubai at the end of last year, there was a lot of discussion on technological tools. So you would have heard words like carbon capture, storage, gray hydrogen, geoengineering, energy efficiency, cutting carbon intensity, a lot of jargon being thrown around. And this is pretty common, and this is increasing as the years go by. And a lot of companies and countries are saying that, okay, we are taking care of climate. Climate action is through these technologies, which are going to save the world in the future. But there are many questions around these technologies, mainly because none of these are ready, none of these are tested, none of them are, are ready to be at the scale that we need it. They're very costly, and so when someone says that I'm investing all my money, or companies are investing all their money, it is a bit of greenwashing because they are investing in something which is not proven to have results. So, and if they say that this is the way that they are taking climate action, they can't say that with certainty. And when they do say it, it amounts to greenwashing. So, as journalists, when we come across some of these, kind of discussions from companies, especially if you're covering corporates, industries, of course, if you're covering environment, but this comes up in different beats as well. It's not just environment beat, it's linked to technology, it's linked to infrastructure, it's linked to businesses, it's linked to corporates, finance. All of that you'll come across this jargon being thrown around, and we don't need to have the answers. We are journalists. We are not, experts in technology or science, and that's okay. But what we can do as journalists is ask questions. And some of the questions, when we're faced with a lot of these solutions, which it may go over our head, they'll say that, oh, carbon capture is the next big thing, and we're going to invest so many $billion in it, and it's going to be the next step in climate action. The questions we can ask is that, okay, so is it going to promote decarbonization? Is it going to reduce emissions, or is it just temporarily good for the environment? So to what extent is it going to help reduce emissions? Is it a proven technology? Is it scalable? What is the cost of this? And usually the cost is very high. So at that cost, are you going to be able to scale it? And some technologies are, in fact, used to recover more oil. So, but because they are, also curbing emissions, they're given subsidies. So these are questions that should they be given subsidies? When someone says that, okay, we're going to reach net zero by 2050, what does that mean? How is it going to be achieved? What does net zero target pledge mean? And very often you'll find corporates or even scientists saying that, oh, you don't understand net zero, oh, you don't understand this, don't get intimidated. We're not supposed to understand all of this. We are journalists, and we're supposed to ask as many questions as we can. And we're supposed to simplify it for our audiences, and we're supposed to investigate the truth behind all of this. So our role is asking questions. Yeah. So in all of this, who is spreading greenwashing? So there are various industries. I mean, there is the utility sector, so gas, electricity, water, power sectors. You'll find a lot of greenwashing coming through these industries because they benefit. I mean, they are contributing most to the emissions, but they also benefit most from greenwashing, so higher profits. Food and beverage industry, you'll see the example which I've shared about Coca-Cola. It gives you makes you believe that, okay, it's natural and organic, and this green fields behind it make you. It gives a visual of something being good. So, and this is even in food industry, you'll see the terms such as organic or 100% natural being thrown around. What does it all mean? What do they mean when they say natural? What do they mean when they say organic? Do they have certifications? So all of these are questions to ask. The fashion industry, automotive. I'll show you a few examples of that next. So we see greenwashing coming from most industries. And Parul, if you could click once. Yeah. But most of this greenwashing is spread through people in our industry. That means in the communications industry. So whether it's, news media, of course, but public relations is a huge industry that spreads greenwashing on behalf of many industry sectors. But there are, PR professionals whose work it is to make consumers believe that something is better or greener or more eco-friendly. Social media, advertising, these are all places where through which greenwashing spreads. And that's the industry that we are in broadly. So it becomes a lot more for us to be responsible and also be aware of what is happening and who's doing it so that we can keep our eyes and ears open. Yeah. So this is an example from the fashion industry and how media helped spread greenwashing in this case. So the fashion company Zara, so they released a collection and they were lauded for it because it said it was made from captured carbon emissions. And Bloomberg, for example, said, okay, Zara is moving away from fast fashion. The fabric is made from carbon emissions. So this was very clearly picked up from the press release. There were no questions asked beyond this. But if you just did a little bit of not even investigation, even if you just read the whole article towards later, and this is something the journalist could have picked up when reporting on it, was that it's a limited edition capsule collection. So Zara has about like 80 collections a year, of which this was one. This was a limited edition, and in fact, these clothes were sold out when by the time this article came out. So clearly, it was just very few items, and they were made of 20% recycled material. So it's not that they were capturing carbon emissions on a large scale. 20% is a very small part of a whole garment. And the technology is not scalable, so they couldn't do beyond maybe how many ever. I mean, they didn't release how many number of garments they made with that technology, but it was a very small amount because it was a limited collection which was sold out within days. But because Bloomberg reported it like this and also kind of made it a bigger deal than it is, saying that they're moving away from fast fashion when it's a very small drop in the ocean is a big claim to make. So that's one of the ways that media has helped spread misinformation or greenwashing, basically. And this is another example which was very popular. So this was called the Volkswagen clean diesel scandal, and it happened in 2015. So these cars were being marketed as environment friendly for a long time until they realized that in reality, the cars were going beyond the legal limits of pollution, and they had a software in the car which made them like they knew when the emission tests were happening, and they would do some fudging in the background of the numbers, so then you would think that the emissions are low, but basically they were cheating on the emissions test. And this is a huge example of greenwashing because Volkswagen faced many lawsuits and fines. They had to pay like billions of dollars in fines and compensation when this was revealed. So this is one of the bigger cases of greenwashing. So in India, we have, these are actually latest greenwashing guidelines. So there is the Advertising Standards Council of India, so which is a voluntary advertising organization, which has put out guidelines for advertisers that, okay, if you're advertising, try and not do this or do this. So I'm not able to share the link, but if you just Google for this, you will find it. The ASCI guidelines for advertisements making environment claims. And the government as well, the Ministry of Consumer Affairs, they put out draft guidelines in February. So the ASCI guidelines are actually implemented from February. The Ministry of Consumer Affairs put out draft guidelines, which will now go through. I mean, they've gone through the process of people giving their inputs. Next will be for them to finalize the guidelines. But both of these guidelines exist, and that kind of shows the importance, um, not the importance of greenwashing, but basically how much greenwashing has taken over. The fact that the government, the advertising councils, all of them have to put out guidelines to make sure. Thanks, Joydeep, for sharing that. So yeah, both of them. If you Google, you will find both of these guidelines. So these guidelines do exist in India, and they require advertisers, the service providers, marketers, product sellers to follow them. And both the ministry and ASCI are kind of coordinating on this. So the ministry can, so ASCI is voluntary, but the ministry can take legal action. So they have asked ASCI that if there is, there are um, kind of advertisers who are not following the guidelines, you can forward that to us and we'll try and take action. So it's good to see that there is, I mean, we'll have to see how it is implemented, but at least there is interest and there is effort to, combat greenwashing. And these are some of the other things that are already happening, or already exist in India. These are the existing mechanisms. They were not created specifically for greenwashing like the previous two guidelines were, but these have been around to prevent things like greenwashing. So, in that sense, like India has a lot of mechanisms, and now it has very specific guidelines for greenwashing. So we are in a good place legally and policy wise on greenwashing, but it's something as media we can ask more questions, investigate further, and we have the guidelines for us to see what has the government said and are people following it. Yeah, you can go to the next one. So, of course, we as journalists, what when we do, and the biggest answer I always give, even in misinformation, is just be good journalists, because the amount of questions, I mean, the amount of answers that you get simply by asking questions or simply doing what you do every day can very often give you clear, the clarity on whether a company is doing greenwashing. So, of course, ask questions, ask many questions, ask about, like I said, the scale of something, or, okay, if this information is there, what does that mean? So, ask questions, speak to multiple sources, because if you, like I showed you in the case of the Bloomberg reporting on the Zara thing. So, if you speak only to the industry, only to the company, you'll get one-sided view. Speak to other people, speak to scientists, speak to researchers, speak to people in the government if you have access, speak to advertisers. There are so many different industries you can speak to people about this, and try and verify from one source or the other whether, because like I said, we're journalists, we may not understand everything about emissions or technologies or everything. So it's best to ask multiple sources. And this is something we do in general as journalists. So continue doing more of that. Highlight, affiliations, funding. So when you know that, because this is something which is common and coming up. So there are a lot of organizations created, or, think tanks created to spread a certain kind of information. But if you go into their funding, thing, you may see that they are funded by a fossil fuel company or they are funded by a pharma company. So look into the funding and see whether that gives you any clues about why they are putting out certain information. And this is also common now with, PR companies. They're bypassing journalists, because now with social media and all, it's very easy to do that. So they're bypassing journalists and they are creating, they're engaging with social media influencers, they're creating their own think tanks, they're creating their own blogs, and they're putting out the information that aligns with the companies that they're representing. So that's something, if as journalists, for us to kind of dig into and find the truth, because there is a whole industry working for you to not find out the truth. And of course, go beyond press releases. This goes without saying. And I mean, one of the ways is to shine the light on genuine green champions. So, in the work that you're doing, of course, you'll come across people who are trying to, make a profit or greenwash. But there are also people, a lot of people doing great work who are open about what they're doing, who are open about the challenges that they're facing, but also how they're overcoming the challenges. So, highlighting those stories. So, highlighting stories of people who are genuinely doing, sustainable work, environmentally friendly work, highlighting their challenges, highlighting how the solutions they found to those challenges. I think all of that makes for better stories, and it kind of puts out there that it is possible to do this without greenwashing. Yeah, we can go to the next. And in particular, I mean, of course, do and that all of you are doing that. But in particular, there are few things to watch out for. There are look at the claims, the language that is used. A lot of times the language is exaggerated, it's vague. It says free, natural, for example, if it says. What does that natural mean? What does, it doesn't give you very specific answers. Sometimes they say free of CFC chemicals or something. But the point is that CFC chemicals are anyways banned in certain products. So if you are not putting something because it's banned, you can't claim that, I'm good because I'm not putting it. I mean, no one's putting it. So those are the ways that's the language to keep an eye on. Visuals is very important because you'll see, I mean, you remember the Coca-Cola image I showed you. So having images of greenery, having green buzzwords like low calorie, natural, bio, organic. No one's going to verify it. Like as a customer, when I go to a store and I'm picking up something, I'm not going to be calling up Coca-Cola and asking, what do you mean by organic or something like that. So, all these visuals, we can stay on the previous side. Yeah. And what is not being said. So if someone is saying that this is what we are doing, there's also questions, and this, as you report more as good journalists, we come up with questions to find out what is it that they're sharing, but what is it that they're not sharing. And again, about ownership, funding, I spoke about that, and going back to our first slide on recyclable. So when there are claims of recyclable, compostable, all of these are questions to ask. How is it recyclable? How is it compostable? And you may find so many answers there, which shows you that it is greenwashing. Yeah, carbon offsetting programs. I will talk a little bit more about that in the following slides, but we can go to the next slide. So some of the things we can do, like these are a couple of resources. So beyond good journalism, beyond asking questions, beyond looking out for visuals and language, um, check the sources. So there are two resources I'll share here. One is called Clean Creatives. So they put out a list of PR or advertising agencies that work with fossil fuel companies in particular. So basically, they are an organization of like a movement of PR and advertising agencies who want to stay clean, which means that they don't want to work with fossil fuel companies that contribute to the human created climate change. So their goal is to stay out of that, and they make a list of agencies or even campaigns. Like the image over here is an Adani campaign, which shows you. I mean, this is what we spoke about earlier, the green shifting, where Adani, which is involved in coal and high number of carbon emissions, is asking what you as an individual can do. Like, can you take a cycle? Can you donate? Can you do this? So it's shifting the responsibility onto individuals. And Clean Creatives puts out this list of campaigns and agencies that are working with fossil fuel companies. So it kind of helps that, okay, if you're writing a story about that, you know who is doing the communications for them and who to contact to get more answers on that. DSMOG is another resource source, a resource of sources. So they have a database which you can browse whether any of the individuals have been or organizations have participated in climate delay techniques, distraction techniques. For India, I mean, database is still building. There are some people that they've identified in that, and I think over time there will be more information there. But globally, they have a lot more, information about individuals and organizations in this database. Yeah, you can go to the next slide. And beyond sources, I mean, there are people who have already done a lot of the fact checks, especially on, the technical issues. So maybe you can, I don't know, take a screenshot of this and go explore these sources later. But there are guides to climate disinformation. There are guides on offshore wind misinformation, like really specific things. So they pick up like, the buzzwords like net zero or offshore, the common claims about offshore wind. So they pick up all these terms and they kind of thing which is popularly we talk about natural gas. So the term natural gas just sounds better than fossil fuel or something, but natural gas is in fact methane gas, and methane is one of the greenhouse gas emissions that are being emitted. So just the terminology that is being used for a lot of things makes you believe that okay, something is not right. And so yeah, you can go through these, and I'm just in fact checking have used it for also is a tool that you're searching for. Yeah, we can go to the next one. They can compensate for greenhouse gas emissions by investing in projects that reduce.
Sorry, we lost Aditi to, I mean, I think there's break in her internet and she'll be back. But meanwhile, if you have any questions, anything, please, I suggest everyone, please feel free to share the questions in the chat box. And when she's back, she can take those questions. In case anybody has any questions, feel free to put it in the chat box, please.
Hi, sorry, I'm back. Yeah, I just had a drop off. Parul, can you hear me? I won't switch on my video, otherwise I'll
Yeah,
drop
no
off
problem,
again.
no problem.
Okay, okay, great. Yeah, so I was talking about carbon offset registries, and these are two, there are multiple registries. These are two that I'm just sharing here, and you can, dig into it and explore it yourselves. We can go to the next slide. Yeah, so this is a tool I wanted to share called Global Forest Watch, and unfortunately, because of my internet situation, I can't demonstrate this. But this is a tool, once you go in there, you can actually look at tree cover loss over, I mean, for certain countries, it's from 2001 onwards. So even if, say, you're doing a story in which you are trying to write about tree cover loss or tree plantation or projects, offset projects that have uh, yeah, offset projects that have, yeah, Global Forest Watch, that's the website. You can go and explore that. And when you click on analysis, it will give you the whole sentence that, okay, from this year to this year, there was this much percent tree cover loss. So this is a screenshot I've taken of just one part of India, like the southern, Kerala primarily. So if I zoom in further and I go into analysis, I will be able to see how much percentage loss has happened over the past 10 years or past 2 years or something like that. So this is a good tool to play around with and explore. And before I go to the next is just going to be a series of other tools that you can use for, especially now in the time of heat and elections. I think that's topmost on our mind, and it was great that you all could be here to talk about something like greenwashing. But I'll just make yeah, a time lapse of satellite images is also possible. So there is many tools out there with Google Earth, Global Forest Watch. You can use all of these to understand tree loss. And Global Forest Watch goes beyond tree cover loss. So this is just an example I've shown here. You can check for climate change. You can check about biodiversity loss. There are many, like once you open it, you'll find that there are many options within that. And if anyone has specific questions on that, you can even email me and I can help you with that. Um, yeah, we can go to the next slide. So I just wanted to kind of put out a few tools that you can use when you're reporting on, especially on heat. We can go to the next slide, Paro. So there's something called the climate shift index tool. And one caveat I want to give is that all of these at the end of the day are tools. They are, uh, you know, technology based. So don't rely on it 100%, though, I mean, these are quite reliable, but always make sure that you are also talking to real people to verify what you have found through these tools. So climate shift index is a tool which tells you what's the likelihood of, how, uh, can I ask all of you to put yourself on mute? Yeah. So climate shift index is something which it tells you how much climate change influences the temperature on a particular day. And we've seen temperatures rising all over India. We've seen it, and sometimes what happens is sometimes the temperature rise is beyond just a climate change impact. It can be because of urban heat islands, so especially in cities, because of the number of buildings and the loss of tree cover, that could cause high temperatures. Sometimes it could just be an anomaly that certain winds in certain directions, that causes the weather of that day is warmer than usual. But in many cases, climate change does have an impact. But to what extent is that impact is what this tool will tell you. So it gives you an index from -5 to +5. So and where you see deep red colors, that's where the amount of influence of climate change is higher. So you'll see that on the coast, climate change has a higher influence on the rising temperatures than in the plains. So these are some of the kind of insights you get from these tools, which can always support your reporting to make it more accurate, especially when you're reporting on heat and heat wave. You can go to the next one, Parul. Yeah. So another useful website to look at is World Weather Attribution. This also talks about the likelihood of climate change impacting, causing heat waves, for example. So this is one of their latest kind of pieces or write-ups in which you can get more detail about the likelihood of climate change. So what happens is every time there's an extreme weather event, so whether there's a flood or a heat wave, the question to ask is, was this event caused by climate change? Because not all of it is caused by climate change. And sometimes because it's a buzzword, we'll end up saying that, oh, because of climate change, this is happening. No, the first question is it really happening because of climate change? And a lot of experts are there to answer that question. But also this website kind of gives you an indication that yes, it may be. You can use it to highlight scientific consensus. You can use it to provide context. You can use it to correct misinformation about the causes of an extreme weather event, because sometimes flooding may just happen because of bad infrastructure or bad, the way concretization has happened in the cities. It may not be only climate change. So it gives you those links and helps you just be, more accurate in your reporting. The heat waves definitely that we're going through now are influenced by climate change, and world weather attribution helps understand how much they are influenced by climate change. And the last tool, I'm sure all of you in some capacity have worked on Pinpoint. So I'm just going to demonstrate a small exercise. I won't demonstrate, but I'll give you the exercise. And if you have used Pinpoint, you can use the tool to get those answers. Or if you haven't, then I think Data Leads has a lot of trainings around Pinpoint. So definitely go into one of those and find out how the tool itself works. Padil, you can go to the next slide. Um, and so it's basically you upload a whole lot of documents. You can upload collection of, like, I think 200,000 documents, audio, images, and go through all of that to find something specific that you're looking for. And something specific that, say, I'm usually looking for is related to climate change or environment or something specific within that. We can go to the slide after this. Yeah, so this is an exercise and we don't have to do it right now because we're out of time, but it's something to save and probably try it on your own. This was during the election time, climate change. I mean, I'm sure all of you have done all sorts of stories on election, but suppose you're writing a story on the promises that have been made regarding action on climate change or the environment. So there are three manifestos, and you can find them online as well. Bharatiya Janata Party, the National Congress, and the CPIM. Download their manifestos. Together they're about like 200 plus pages. So if I had to, and the way we're doing election reporting, we would have to have these stories out very quickly. And maybe you don't have time to go through 200 pages to find what have they said about climate change. In that case, you can use Pinpoint. You can upload these documents and you can search for certain words. So you search for climate change, you search for environment, and it shows you what do these manifestos say about these terms. And that itself can become either it can become a story by itself, or it can be a fact check in the sense if any of the parties have talked about climate change or environment in any of their speeches, you can fact check those speeches by checking what they've said in their manifesto as well on these topics. So Pinpoint just helps you speed up the work that you're already doing and go through a huge number of documents together at the same time. So I'll leave you with this exercise, and maybe we can take one or two questions to end the session. So I'll just, yeah, quickly go through this. So carbon offsetting by itself is a trading mechanism. So governments or businesses, when they want to compensate for their greenhouse gas emissions in one place, they invest in projects that remove emissions elsewhere. So if I'm a fossil fuel company in the US, I may plant trees in Indonesia to remove emissions. This is not the practical way of how climate change works, but this is the accepted way in the industry to do, emission offsetting. And India is one place where a lot of these projects are taking place. And what these registries help do is to find out like what are the projects happening in India, which are the emission removal projects. So usually it's either tree plantation or it's clean cook stove distribution or some plastic waste management, and you can find out all the documents related to that project, who is gaining the credits from doing these projects, and you can investigate further because a lot of you can look through. I think Guardian has done a whole series on carbon offsetting investigations, where they find that there are a lot of either human rights violations or other violations happening in these projects. So these registries are just the starting point to find those linkages, that who is doing carbon offset projects where, and then you take that to go further and do your investigations. I hope that's clear.
Very helpful, Aditi. In case anybody has any question, which is the global agency or agencies overseeing compliance of all carbon offsetting nations? Like, is there a central exchange?
So I don't think there's a central agency. I mean, these are registries which basically give you the certification to allow you to do this. So there are at least like five or seven or many types of these registries. So I think, yeah, I don't think there's a central place where you can get all the information in one place. So it does require a bit of digging around. So yeah.
Zoya has a question. She wants
Yeah.
I wanted to understand how we can start finding climate misinformation on social media, specifically in India. I mean, how do you investigate climate misinformation? Where to start?
Yeah, I mean, one place to start is some of those, direct databases about sources that are putting out misinformation. So, so what happens is like DSmog was the one I mentioned. So DSmog puts out a lot of examples of people on social media who are putting out misinformation about climate change. And especially if you track those people around, I mean, World Environment Day, of course, but around climate conferences and everything, you will see what kind of misinformation they put out and how to dig through that. In India, it's not as we don't have such a sophisticated system where there's like a list of people who put out misinformation. It's usually a mix of people, but when you see information, especially when you during heat waves, when you see like maps being shared and data being shared and this and that, before reporting on it or while reporting on it, it's always good to go to a couple of experts rather than and even if it's shared by an expert, it's always good to cross verify with another expert that is this true. Check out their leanings, social listening techniques. Yes, I mean, in those who are trained in general misinformation and fact checking techniques will have some of these social listening techniques to find out what people are saying about this. And that's a whole different webinar, which I'm sure data leads will have at some point. But yeah.
Rachna has a question that it's
Mhm.
difficult to find research on greenwashing. It also becomes challenging to distinguish between product labeled as sustainable and those that are genuinely sustainable. How
Hmm.
should we report on such issues or convince newsrooms?
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely difficult to find out the difference, and that's why greenwashing exists, so that you are confused and you make the choice that profits certain people. And it is, what was the first part of the question? It's difficult to, Parul, if you can just read the first
Like
part
it's
of this.
becoming challenging to distinguish between products labeled as sustainable and
Yeah,
those
yeah,
that are genuinely sustainable.
correct.
So
So
how do you
yes,
convince newsroom?
yeah, it is. But I think to convince newsrooms is basically that it is a type of investigative reporting. It is a type of reporting to benefit the readers who are consumers of all these products. And see, readers don't have time, like I said, to ask these questions. So I go to a supermarket, there are 10 boxes which are labeled organic. I don't have the time or ability to, or who should I ask about these questions? But as a reporter, we are the people who have the ability to ask these questions, dig out these answers, and we can do that. Like you can do maybe a package on like looking through all the sustainable campaigns of automotives in the past year and digging in to see, and some of them may in fact be true, and highlighting those are also important. But you may find some greenwashing, highlighting that is also important. So in a way, you're doing an investigation to give a voice to your reader who is also a consumer of these products. And as you would do with any other investigative stories to hold governments accountable, um, it's the same argument you would make for greenwashing.
So thank you so much, Aditi, for such an insightful session. It was interesting. Sad that we had the internet kind of
Yeah, I'm so
played.
sorry about that. Yeah.
No worries. But still, the session was very engaging, and thank you very much. And we got to learn so much on the greenwashing. So it was really, really interesting. The GNI India Training Network has this training module on climate change verification, where you can find all these important elements on environment, climate misinformation, and the tools and approaches to combat it. So in case you think this particular training module would be interest to you for in your newsroom or in your press club or in your journalism school, please let us know. We'll be happy to host the GNI India Training Network in your organization. Again, just a bit of feedback. Please would be very happy if you could share your feedback with us about today's session. It'd be really, really, really helpful. It really helps us to improve the entire training program, and of course, also helps to enhance the learning program. So just take few minutes to please fill this particular feedback form. And thank you very much for being here today. I understand that even despite elections and everything so crucial happening, you all invested this time and energy and effort to be at this webinar. Thank you so much for participating in this webinar. We'll be back soon with a new topic, with a new subject matter expert. And hopefully, you had a great time attending this session. So, thank you very much. And we keep posting our training programs, our trainings, our webinars on the Data Leads digital space. So please follow us there. So whenever we have next webinars, we post it there. So you'll all you will know it. So thank you very much for being here today. Had a
Yeah.
great afternoon. So thank you very
Thank you,
much. Take
Parul,
care.
and thank you everyone